Well, I think in the videos that I made about sort of the SMS mods and my opinions about all that stuff, it was all quite sort of high energy. I was laughing a lot. I think laughing makes it easier to deal with, I mean, it was a lot of serious stuff that I've been through, and laughter kind of makes it easier to process it. You can be a bit irreverent, in the face of all that. But yeah, I wanted to make a video about the sdll thing as well, and yeah, that stuff is rather less. I can laugh about it a lot less. I think a few days ago I had this song in my head, and it kind of pushed me to think about things. It was Black Dog by Arlo Parks, which I've mentioned a bit in my journals as well. This is just a song about depression and that kind of thing, and I just started thinking like a lot of the sadness that I feel around this situation and where it comes from is just the sense of betrayal. Just by itself, there's been a lot of arguing about like narratives and conspiracies and people, trying to ostracize me out of communities and all this stuff that keeps happening. But I think that's kind of a different thing when I'm arguing about all of that, trying to just like get the facts straight. Whereas when I'm trying to talk about how that, that made me feel, all of what happened. So I just thought maybe it would be nice to sit down and talk about it. And yeah, I'm gonna have a dead voice and not that much time to say it all, but I'll try. Like, the two things that I think this video might add to what I've already said is that it might add more of a concise chronology, because I noticed that's been a lot of what the arguing has been about for a whole year and a half, particularly around one-ups. Well, I'm going to call them all as I have called them by their first names. But yeah, there's that, and there's also just that I've had like a lot of reflections on my own mistakes and how I feel about those, which I've never really committed into I've never really expressed them in a coherent way. Like, I've just kind of hinted at them in various like diary entries and things. So I don't know. I wanted to cover those, the things that I felt the worst about the stuff that I did, but also the things that I've already written about, which are the things that were done to me and made me sort of acutely feel really bad. So that's kind of the idea of this. And one sec, I might pause from time to time. I'm kind of conscious that I have like an appointment I'm supposed to be at, but I just didn't have time to cancel it because it was booked without my consent within less than 24 hours. So I think I'll just forget about it and get back in touch later today. But yeah, I'll just talk. I haven't really scripted much, only a few things to say at the beginning to just get me started in the right headspace. But yeah, I wanna talk, I guess. Maybe it'll be different to when I write, and maybe this will be more relatable to people as if, a human said it. It came from a voice. So okay, let's do it. I'll try to make it as short as possible as well. Right, so chronology is kind of the main thing that this is going to be structured around, so we'll start it chronologically as well, by saying, July 2021, which is when Luke and I fell out at the beginning. Yeah, What happened at the beginning was just my own reflection on our friendship, and for like a week, I can't remember how long actually. I think it might have even been a whole month. Before that, I'd kind of just cottoned on to him losing interest in me because he'd stopped doing IELTS. He just stopped talking to me, and I just wondered about what was going on. We'd sort of made the plan to do something together, and then he cancelled the follow-up plan and didn't say anything, or like say anything as a follow-up. And then I just started introspecting. Like I remember, I'm still stressed, so that's why my eyes tick a bit. I remember being like out on walks around Chiswick thinking about this and just feeling a kind of melancholy, like it was kind of pressing down on me. And so I just confronted him about it. And it was just, I mean, it wasn't, it wasn't that deep in a sense. I mean, it was like, at the beginning, it was like he took advantage of me, right? When I was around Gabe in order to sort of be friends with her, to befriend her after they'd fallen out, he would sort of join our calls, which we did in public because they were just like SMS calls and things. And he would join them and they'd be like very warm and he'd show this love. And it was sort of, I just realized eventually only directed at Gabe and the rest of the mutual friend group except me. And I just like, it made me feel quite bad. And there was that, and also, him sort of getting close to me to talk about IELTS, and everything was just so intimate, in terms of just the way that he talks to people, I guess. I mean, the emotions he shows. And for me, it was just, I mean, he has for sure a personality disorder, and this is kind of where the intimacy comes from. Like, it didn't mean anything to him, but I just kind of fell into the trap. And then from also being exploited, it just kind of hit upon my history of friendships that were asymmetric, particularly when I'd pick out people that I liked for some reason. And so with Luke, it was a bit of a crush. In the past, with other people, it was like I just wanted to be friends with them. I had common interests with them. With Luke, it was more like a sort of common personality traits in some sense, just a kind of common. We just saw eye to eye on emotions quite a lot, and so yeah, I kind of got stuck in it. I couldn't really. It was difficult for me to accept that it wasn't a close. He didn't feel like anything about the friendship. He was kind of very dismissive about it, and he was constantly threatening me every time he got a bit angry about something to just like kick the friendships. Like we just don't click and that kind of a thing. And so I just kind of felt inferior, I guess, and struggled with that. And yeah, just kind of that and the feeling of being exploited. I just didn't know what I was experiencing, and it kind of started to come to a head. The head that is basically where my life is now in terms of dealing with friendships and lack of intimacy. It just kind of started boiling over finally. It was kind of a long time coming, I guess, but this was like the last thing I'd finally invested myself into, and it just ended like that with a kind of callous dismissal of our friendship. And that's when we stopped talking. And yeah, I just regret it. I mean, I don't know why. I was intense. I wasn't really. I mean, I struggled. I wasn't that bad about it. I just kind of said I was thinking maybe I should talk about this in public. About the exploitation and that kind of thing. But it was only a fleeting thought. It was just in that period of my thoughts being up and down, and so I am glad that I managed to, while talking to Luke afterwards about it, I managed to put that in its place and be fairly assured with him that I wouldn't talk about it in public and we should just sort it out in private. But it turned out, he came to me in a fit of hysteria about this and about what I was saying on Twitter, or how I was feeling. And then he basically, out of that, in order to get him to calm down, I kind of had to send him a little note that I'd made about what he had done with Gabe in terms of invading our friendship to get close to her and just disregarding me in it. And he admitted it all on the spot, changed to being very apologetic, but he admitted it, and that's kind of how I knew it was true. And then he was apologetic about it from there for a while, and I didn't know how to handle it because I knew it was true, and I just thought I don't know, like I was being very cautious. I just had to get away from him. Sorry, I was thinking maybe I had to get away from him. Maybe I didn't. I didn't really know what to do, and I was very non-committal and took my time in terms of expressing the grievances I had. I wanted to basically, the healthy thing to do was to just confront him and say, this is what you did, this is how it made me feel. And JPEP told me to do that. And I was going to, but then with him having a hysterical reaction in the beginning, I just kind of started leaking parts of the information, and then the rest of it it just kind of built up. I was like, I'm not going to talk in this chaotic way where I'm not sure even what I'm saying because you're so hysterical, so I'm going to try to just write it all down. And then because I'm an autistic fuck, I wrote it all down in a massive document, and that set him off kind of. But the thing that most set him off was the letter I sent to him about, in some sense, my attraction towards him, but it was a very loaded letter. I mean, it's kind of, I saw a video from Dr. K saying, like, you don't dump those feelings on people because they've built up for a long time and those people aren't going to know what to do. But it was even worse for me because, well, for two reasons. First of all, well, let me phrase it this way. So this is one of the things that I most regret. It's the letter to Luke, and then also later on the letter to Gabe, the famous letter to Gabe. But like the letter to Luke, I regret because in the same way that sort of my isolation from friendships and that had built up into me being very unstable after he'd revealed his how he actually felt about me. With sex, it was that, except so much worse because it was just like your whole life just kind of built up into that feeling of increasing desperation, I guess. And then when that comes out, it just gets like messed up. And yeah, you can imagine. But the other side of it is, it wasn't my fault because what I was going through, what he was putting me through when it comes to that topic, is he was flirting with me, but it was a fake flirt. It was designed to unsettle me and get a reaction so that he could like laugh about me. Well, laugh with me, you would say. But essentially, he was just coming on to me in a really strong way. That happened once, but then it's like all the other stuff that happened around it. It was, it's kind of constant coming on to sort of everyone. You'd be in a Twitch chat and he would just say things like, just like a public chat, and he'd say like, if anyone wants to fuck me, then they should message me, they should tell me I need it too, and that kind of a thing. It was the blurred lines between what he was saying, because he thought he rationalized it all in his head as if it was all just like a bit, all a big joke, but it was just this sort of constantly seductive behavior. And no matter sort of how uncomfortable he made his other friends feel, he would continue just pushing like sort of very overt talking about sex, and also, it stretched, like I mentioned this, to masturbating in voice calls and that kind of a thing, and just like talking about the porn that he was watching, and he was watching it with other people as well, because as a group it had that culture, so the others were kind of engaging with it to a lesser extent as well. And yeah, it was some of the tweets that he made along along these lines that kind of set me off and gave me that reaction. And I know from all of that, in some sense it's not his fault, because this is explained by his personality disorder, and I don't really mean to blame him either for the fact that he was like that. When I read about some of the cluster B disorders and like how inappropriate seductiveness comes into them, it just all suddenly made sense. I mean, at this point, it's still really fucked up, because he hasn't even come close to accepting that what he was doing was not normal. But from my perspective, it's like I just got, because I had that crush and because I had those built up feelings from the past decades, that weren't really directed at him. And I don't think any of it was that directed at him, but it was just like, I got trapped in that. I got trapped in his seductiveness and all of that, and I just did that. And I mean, I don't blame myself, because like as soon as, pretty soon afterwards, he reacted to it, as you can imagine, in a very negative way. And this was really what set him off to try to cancel me in the beginning, or not cancel me, but just like vent to lots of different people. It was the beginning of the abuse. That's where it started. The social abuse. But when I come to this point in my life and I think, just, this is where I am, this is where I'm going, then the guilt, the regret that I have over what I did there, because it would have just stopped me from going down this path if I could have saved that, if I could have just not fallen into the trap, set off the abuser, essentially, if I could have just not done that. So I feel pretty bad about that, I mean, as you can imagine. Yeah, Luke was fine in the immediate beginning, and then I settled things with him because, of course, actually, I forgot to say this, but part of the letter was that it was, not only was I brutally honest about how I felt about him, but I was also, threatening, in the sense that I tried to force him to be honest by just saying, you can't get away with trying to just like cover up that you were joking when you were flirting with me, because I know you from all of the things that you've said over the past year. And then he just thought, well, I mean, it's manipulation, because I was suppressing information from him, and he thought, like, it's threatening because I don't know what the information is, I don't know what you're going to do with it. And then he started panicking, as if I was going to like start spreading it, because that's kind of one of the most important things about a cluster B, is that they cared the most about how other people see them, rather than about how people they hurt feel. And that was the main thing that motivated him throughout, like, everything. But obviously, it's his disease, and I tried to not hold it against him that much, and just tried to work around it. And I knew there was also a someone there who might actually see my pain and react to it, and things might get better. We might actually have a good relationship after this. And yeah, so this is in August. I forgot to transition to August, but the letter that I sent him was in August, and his reaction was, I got him to calm down. I clarified I wasn't going to cancel him over this, but he cancelled me over this. And people will say it was like a soft cancellation because it was in private, but I was just getting banned left, right, centre. I had no idea whom he had told, because it was random people. It was people he was, it was fucking awesome. Awesome city. Yeah, so like, um Yeah, just getting kicked out of SDLL there, and then getting kicked out of what was Pappuccino's Discord, which was just a Discord I was friends with some people in. Getting accused of like being a terrible person, emotionally abusive and whatever, and like that was the beginning. And I think from that decision that Luke made, he never really backed down. I think on some level his motive was to get rid of me by any means necessary. And that was a lot of what was attested to by people who saw what he was writing about me. And a lot of it was leaked, so I saw it myself. Um, but yeah, the feeling I had there and how it sort of tipped over, I was just in sort of paralyzing anxiety because it was like a kind of sort of a chain reaction that was just expanding out, and I was lying on that bed, sort of half dreaming about sort of just. I mean, I wrote about this in L is real, but it's like in L is real. Shouldn't mumble so much, but it was like holding onto a bus radiator while it was just rattling. It's just that feeling of you don't know what. I mean, you don't know what people are going to think of you, but it's also just like this person cut contact with you and is spreading all this false information about you. People are clearly getting the wrong idea, and you're just losing friends. Other friends, and I never did that to him. I genuinely never did that to him. Just in the end, I wrote about what he did. But he never lost any friends over it. He just lost like his ability to be in a public community, but he never lost any friends over it. Not anyone who mattered. At least that's how it seems to me. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. Okay. Yeah. Let's move on a bit. So accelerate the pace of the storytelling. So we got to August and this happened. In the rest of August, I just tried to fix things. I set aside my entire victimhood because I realized this was getting out of control and it was hurting him, and it was kind of like a cycle of mutual abuse at that point. Although it wasn't really abuse, it was more just like hurtfulness. It was just the beginning. But I took so many different measures to try to get things figured out and to calm down, and in the end, I mediated everything with him. I managed to actually tell him the stuff that hurt me. He apologized a lot. It seemed like he really meant it. And it also, in the end, seemed like he meant it when he admitted he didn't, he didn't like me. He said that he liked me in the sense that, I was like a cool person or whatever, but like in terms of our relationship, in terms of our friendship, the intimacy that he'd sort of performed in what he was talking about and all that, all of it was vapid. It didn't have the feeling behind it. And how I knew was he told me, like, every time I tried to talk to him about things other than like Gabe and SMS, he would always be trying to distance and be trying to be cold in order to not let the friendship develop. And he was scared that I had feelings for him. I don't know why he was scared of that, because it's not something to be scared of. Okay. Let me just quick check. I'll check quickly that my audio hasn't broken, because it does that sometimes. So I just need to mic check. Yeah, it's fine. Right. So like after that, I mediated it with him. Everything seemed fine, but like things weren't. He kept sort of pressuring me to find out how Gabe and JPEP, like what they thought about him, because he knew I'd been talking to them about things. And I was always calming him down and giving him sort of reassurance. And then I kind of said the same thing in reverse. Like I just said, like, I'm showing you this so you can be assured that things are calming down and de-escalating. And then he just hid from me the fact that he'd told everyone in SDLL. because I knew he told Christian, but I hadn't known he told everyone else. And Theo, of course, who had heard from both of us. He was trying to help. But we were mediating. We had this beautiful conversation very close to the end that might even have been like the basis for a reconciliation, because it was just that kind of a emotional and warm conversation that we used to often have. I think we were talking about like Limmy and some of the stuff that he said, and he was also a very allegorical person, same as me, and so he'd take like things out of the media that he watched and listened to and just make his own sort of deductions about life, and they would always resonate with me. So it was that kind of a conversation. And then the next day he just tells me like, yep, I told all of these people, and then he tried to pressure me as well, in the sense that, first of all, I was not close to those people, but he was close to them, and he was convincing them not to talk to me. He was telling me it didn't matter because of that, and then as I reacted, he felt more and more guilty, and then he said that he would try to sort things out a bit more so that I could talk to my friends. But he pressured me as well, in the sense that he said, like, I don't think that we were going to go on a break from each other for a couple of months to just let things settle down. And he was like, I don't think this should stop our break. The fact that he told me this and just kind of revealed that I had all these friendships to deal with. And so me, in the way that I cope with these things, I just said, okay, we'll do the break, and I'm going to try to fix these friendships myself. And then I went out, started talking to people, particularly Nick, just get blanked like it's nothing. And nothing's changing with Christian. Apparently I'm still banned. We've not even spoken about it. And then my friends who were, because this is like one friend group. That's the thing. And I was just getting kicked out, and that made me feel so bad. As if I was nothing. But then like I had these mutual friends, Theo and Gabe there. And they just made it very clear to me that they weren't going to say anything. It's like the direction it was going in was they were going to just pretend like I didn't exist, keep being friends with those people. When I say pretend I didn't exist, I mean in that friend group. Outside, they would still be friends with me, and like I was just supposed to be fine with it, which, I feel like the answer is always just trust that things will get better later. Just relax. But I always wanted to just see the goodwill, and so when I was just being treated like this, I just feared the worst, I guess. And then I wrote a letter to try to get through to them, and I put it in public because I wanted to talk to all of them at the same time. I was scared to talk to Christian because he was just so hostile. And I just kind of felt so gaslit the first time I talked to him over all of the lies that Luke had told him about me. And so I just didn't want to. And it's that kind of mistake that I kept making about just not, I guess, trusting in the future. But it just kind of built up in me, I guess, because for 26 years I was just always waiting for something that I knew wasn't coming. And, things never did get better for me. And so I just thought, if it's like this, it's always going to be like this. I just became kind of fatalistic about it. So after that, they reacted badly to the letter. Theo dropped the ball on defending me, according to his own words. Gabe was just not saying anything, would never say anything. And so then they all felt worse about me. A month into our 2-month break, Luke just decided, fuck this guy, I'm coming back. He was like, I'm not, the terms we negotiated together were like too draconian for him, even though I had literally no way to talk to anyone in SDLL. And this, him coming back caused me a panic attack. And a couple of days before, also had tried to cancel me over what I'd done to Luke, supposedly sexually harassed him. And Luke came out and said this isn't sexual harassment, and then also pissed off. But that was another night of just being unable to sleep, just anxiety the whole night. Wonderful experience. And yeah, Luke trying to come back into the SMS community gave me a panic attack as a result of our deal and what was happening with SDLL. So Gabe and JPEP spoke to him and got him to respect our agreement and also agreed a mediation. And as time went by, JPEP started talking to Luke, but Luke was still just lying a lot. Just like most things he said, I guess, were just wrong. I never really knew. JPEP never told me. JPEP started hiding from me what Luke had said. And then I said to them, unknowing of what was going on, I said to Gabe and JPEP, I think, this, because it was just dawning on me what Luke had done and all of the manipulation techniques, and I've mentioned several of them even here. And I was just thinking, well, this is going into the direction that I need to talk about it, because if I don't talk about it, then I'll have to live with Luke in the SMS community forever, despite the fact that he's done this to me, and I would just always be feeling the fear, because I forgot to say, the second really bad thing that I felt was just losing those friendships in a permanent way, not getting a reply from Nick and getting another reply from Christian saying, like, you did all this stuff that you didn't do. Just kind of never talking to you again kind of thing. And I just, because of, what had happened with Luke, he was definitely lying. It was obvious from what Christian was saying. And so I just thought, well, the fact that he's being believed and what's going on here, all of the stuff that I wrote about in L is real, just the kind of losing matchup, I started to understand this, how I would just lose to manipulators and lose my friends, unrelated friendships. And I don't think anyone knows why being friends with Nick was so important to me there, but all of it was just a kind of last gasp at having good friends and intimacy and trying to make this stuff work, because I just wasn't like, nothing was a good fit for me in the rest of my life, and I just was never, I didn't have these kind of mutual friends' interests in music and listening parties that we were doing, and the kind of way that we spoke to each other, and to say nothing about the intimacy with Luke and with Gabe. So I just, who knows, man? I mean, I think it kind of comes across from everything that I've said. But yeah, I just kind of collapsed into the void. I'm just trying to build friendships and none of it working out. Because somebody else had decided to basically destroy me within the friend group over our own relationship not working out. Yeah, that was the point where I first thought, this is the end for me. I'm not going to try with friendships and all of that anymore. And then I had to explore from that point. Initially I wanted to kill myself, but I had to just explore. Could I be happy just being grateful for all of the stuff in life not related to other people? Could I just do my ILs in SMS and be happy and, try to do other stuff? But it just kind of destroyed me. I just lost interest. Like, when I stopped talking to Luke initially, after we agreed to split up for a couple of months, I was trying to actually confront my history of my sexuality and the stuff I was talking about. I started thinking about which apps I could use for dating, hookups and stuff. But then as soon as I realized these friendships were over in SDLL, I just kind of gave up, and I haven't really done anything to improve my life ever since then. So that's kind of how you don't have the actionable conclusions, you don't have anything you want to do. So that's just how I know. Sorry, that was a little bit out of order, but I had to mention that because I was feeling that at the time. So, it was in October when Luke tried to come back and the fake sexual harassment case happened. And then it was in November when I told Gabe and JPEP, I'm starting to figure out what this guy has done. I'm going to need to talk about it if I'm going to, be in the SMS community at all. And so, yeah, I started. I said I would do that. I was thinking about it, and that was in November. And Gabe and JPEP didn't reply for a whole week. And in the meantime, JPEP told Luke, and then Luke had already been undermining the mediation we were going to do because he told everyone in sdll that he basically implied I was pressuring him to mediate, whereas he had told Gabe and JPEP that he was offering it, to make things better. So the duplicity was very much setting in at this point in terms of him having completely different perspectives depending on whom he spoke to about the situation. And then he just torpedoed it. As a result of learning that I wanted to expose him, he torpedoed the mediation and blamed someone else for it. Just kind of lied that someone had told him that he didn't want to do it. And from that point onwards, December, January, February, March, as I was writing the case, Luke was just getting more and more hostile, lying more and more publicly, and it was just kind of confirming to me I had to basically take this guy out, or otherwise I would just be getting more and more of my relationships destroyed by him. It was an active risk, and in many ways continues to be one. Something I start to realize is that when you have that fear over someone and what that person can do to you, then the world is too small. You can't get away. Even if I left the SMS community, cut ties with anyone who has heard of a Luke Hardy, then I still can't get away from him in my mind. So, yeah, what happened next then? That was what was happening with Luke, and at the same time, Gabe had to, Gabe and Jacob tried to pressure me to not talk about Luke in public, and then Gabe admitted it was selfish of her. She wasn't listening to what I was saying at all. They didn't care to hear my evidence, and I leaked some of it to them eventually to at least hint that I was on the right track. But then Gabe realized, she apologized in January. We're in January 2022. Gabe apologized for not listening, basically, and for doing whatever she could to make herself feel better, which meant not having anything challenge her other friendships with this guy who was being revealed to be an abuser. And the more the case came together, the more obvious it became. January, February, I was talking to Theo a lot, and Theo is in large part a reason why the case happened against Luke, because he got behind it completely. And he led my inference, me figuring out what had happened. Because I was blaming sdll more as a whole in the beginning, but then Theo explained to me that it was actually an understandable mistake that Christian had made to ostracize me, because he had been misled by Luke, who had presented me as being so dangerous that I had to be gotten rid of at all costs. There's a direct quote from Theo from those conversations in January, February 2022. And I knew it was happening. Because, I'd seen the DMs with Awesome. I saw how Luke did this. I saw how he manipulated people. Everything was just, I'm telling you this, do not talk to me about it, don't tell me what he said, and then all that stuff about saying these people are close friends, they're not close to you, and saying that to them as well. Like, you're not close to him, so don't talk to him. All these manipulation techniques. There were so many lies as well. It was kind of the thing that stood out about the case was just how heavy it was in terms of repetition, how many different techniques that he used to manipulate people. And Theo, basically, if you think about how that case works, the stuff was directly proven with how Luke affected Orsimo and how Orsimo reacted. But we couldn't prove what happened with SDLL because it was trusted. Everyone in the friend group except me was allowed to see what was being said about me. And so I never found out what he said about me. So Theo was crucial in the case. He basically Theo swore that what I had basically proven in terms of how Luke misled Orsimo, that the same thing had happened in SDLL, because I didn't have receipts about what he had said. I only had receipts showing some of the manipulation techniques, but not what he said. So, it's like I'll never actually even know what he said. But I just had Theo vouching for me. And this is important to remember because we're talking about betrayal. I put my trust in Theo to figure out what had happened and to protect me from it as the case then came out. March 2022, the case comes out. And it's really important for me to emphasize, despite what Gabe and JPEP are saying, actually not even JPEP, it's just Gabe, I think, who's been lying about this, but basically, you can just read our DMs and we were all on the same page. Gabe might have been more charitable towards Luke, but she just didn't really let on. She didn't let on that she was unhappy with any of how I was handling it. She just let it all happen. And we were going to be friends, and it was all fine. We were just on the same page. I thought we had all seen the case the same way, the way in which I knew Theo saw it, because Theo and I discussed it extensively, so I knew we were on the same page. And JPEP at that point just said to me, like, I can't imagine how it must have felt for you to know that you were right the whole time and nobody believed you. And it was the most he had ever felt he had let me down, was to basically sell me out to Luke and leak information and let him hide information from me in the other direction. So it was asymmetric. He just said, like, it's a very clear-cut abuse case. He should be banned from SMS for 2 years, was his opinion. Steel solid doc all around, he said. So, okay. I'll take a quick break, actually, in order to collect myself up as I deal with the other half of the story, which is the stuff after the doc. I have to just keep going. I have to get through the rest of this because my mum's going to come back home and I have no freedom. I have no freedom to talk about things whenever I want to and to take as long as I need to. I just have to get it all done. And this is part of the reason why I want to leave so badly. I just want to get out of this cell, to just get out of my life. Because it's just... there's just so little freedom. Okay, so things were okay with Gabe and me, but she just, she never spoke to Nick about him, just cutting me off in order to be friends with Luke. And that was something that really got to me as well, because it was, Nick was saying to me, I'm not close to either of you. These are just casual friendships. And then he bonded with Luke over Luke faking being abused. And Nick still wasn't close with either me or Gabe. But Nick cutting me off in that situation with Gabe just didn't care, and she was my best friend, but she was a casual friend of Nick's. Yet she just, didn't say anything to him. She tried to just keep being friends with him as well as the others in SDLL, as if nothing had happened. At that point, she cut off Luke and Christian over the fact that neither of them wanted to actually talk about the issue, and she was uncomfortable with that. But then I just started becoming uncomfortable about firstly, how she had not ever said anything to Christian, and that was the thing that she says as well, is the thing I was uncomfortable about. She never said anything to Christian about it, but I mean, I ended up forgiving her for that because it was in the past. There was no reason she would say something to him because now she didn't want to talk to him. But, even though Luke had abused me and we'd agreed this, Gabe was still in their Discord, just kind of not keeping me up to date with any of that. And whenever I was around her, I was just around sdll. I was trying to be friends with other SMS players. I was doing races with Doge Cyanide at the time. I was talking to Despin a lot, and these were things that were just building. So I wanted to get away from Gabe because Gabe was sdll, and Gabe was constantly encroaching on my races with Doge. She didn't realize she was encroaching, but that's how I felt because of this, because of that lack of open honesty about her friendships with people who were entirely supporting and sheltering my abuser. So at that point, I said to Gabe, I feel uncomfortable about this, but it's my fault. And I started giving reasons. I started being open and setting a basis for things we could talk about. But I didn't directly challenge her because I just thought it was my fault. And I didn't realize it was not my fault. I didn't realize I should expect from Gabe to stand up for me with the guy who cut me off to support my abuser, and also for her to not be in the Discord where all of the abuse happened. These things were not too much to expect of anyone. And even if not that, to just talk to me about it. But that's the thing, I never actually said to her because I thought it was my fault, so I tried to leave her out of it. And that's going to be the thing that I also regret, even though how could I have known what my feelings would be, I had to let those feelings develop. But me just saying I need to, distance it, just Gabe is cluster B as well, you have to remember, and it just set her off. She made it all about herself and started complaining, for example, about her own relationship with Nick, and basically doubling down on the point that she was not going to do anything that could jeopardize losing the friendships with the people who were supporting my abuser. It's not Gabe's fault that they were supporting him, but nor did I want her to just cut them off. I wanted to just talk about it. I mean, we had to be on the same page about Nick, for example. But yeah, I had long conversations with Theo in the aftermath of this then, and talking about how I felt about all these things and my sort of fears and discomfort and around, both of their behavior, because there were things that Theo was doing that were bad as well. But Theo was willing to be open about his everything, and so it was easy for me to actually trust him and keep him on sides. But with Gabe, it was even though we'd spoken about Nick, for example, this was still early on for me, so I didn't even realize that Nick would be the big issue that I had with Gabe. So I had to let those feelings develop from my own side, but I mean, she just didn't say anything, and she just kept going on as normal with them, and comprehensively started hiding those friendships and acting like I didn't exist, at least I think. And then, at that point, I mean, I just let things settle down. We hadn't cut anything off. We were still invested in being friends with each other. We were just separate. And Gabe was talking about everything, but she was talking with JPEG. she just kept me out of it completely. She was like fighting for our friendship, but she was doing all the talking with JPEP, which is just, I don't know. I mean, I started to try to approach the issue with JPEP as well, in the sense that I kept him up to date with my own feelings. And so JPEP became aware, for example, that my main complaint was with Nick. And so the fact that that Gabe is still saying that it wasn't about Nick, but it was about her not doing enough for me, or like talking to Christian or whatever. I don't know how she can think that when I told JPEP. But this is the thing, when I talk about my regrets, well, I guess the second biggest regret is going to be that I just wasn't clear, that I never explicitly said that it was about Nick until I wrote the letter, in which I think made it a lot clearer that that was what the issue was. And it's like, could I have handled this better? I mean, I feel like you need the goodwill of the person to actually want to take care of you, because, Gabe hadn't been abused, and I was in such a sensitive spot with that. I was just, surely she should be talking to me about it and making sure that I feel fine about it, about her relationships with people who are supporting my abuser. I think so. I mean, I'm not surprised that I felt so betrayed and felt so bad. And I did say this in my letter, that it was that she was hiding it and not talking about it with me, and not centering things around me more as the person who was the victim, considering she wanted to have something to do with my abuser still. So yeah, this is April, is when when we distanced, and it was in May when I told JPEP that I was figuring out my emotions. And then between then and August, I mean, things got a bit worse with me and Gabe because of SMS community drama, it wasn't really about Gabe. Gabe made it about herself again. The fact that I was having these arguments with them. So I don't think I really owe her. I don't think it's really my fault. Sorry, not that I owe her, but I don't think I had much to do with the fact that we distanced because of that. It shouldn't have happened, and I think it's her fault that it did. But I mean, yeah, that made things worse. And then over time, yeah, just the pain builds up. I remember how much I was crying about this, about this stuff with Dongaduck, and I just felt, I realized, perhaps correctly, perhaps not, that the situation was being caused more by her not taking me into account in terms of having these friendships. And that's kind of motivated my letter. And then the letter happened in August. We're in August 2022. Letter to Gabe, which was born of that pain, and this is like the third instance of massive pain that I felt. The first one being when I was first having people turned against me by Luke, and the second being when I found out I'd permanently lost sdll friendships because of Luke. So, and then the third one is the third big pain that I had was then feeling betrayed by Gabe. And it all came out in that letter, and you can't, I mean, the guilt, I think it's completely obvious that the guilt that I feel over that letter, because, I mean, for the same reason as with Luke, but this one was even worse. It had even, yeah, I mean, well, it hurt her a whole lot more. I guess, but part of me thinks, well, it wasn't a manipulative letter unlike the one with Luke, and so therefore the one with Luke is worse. But I don't know, it doesn't matter. It was just like, it doesn't matter. I think the main thing to say about it is, the guilt I feel for the same reason as the letter to Luke is just that, like, this is what set everything off. And I could have saved myself from the position that I'm in now if I had not done that. And it was an awful thing to have done, I think, as well. I don't think it's my fault because, well, for starters, I had been betrayed. And the second thing is I was reacting to it in a way that I'd basically internalized because of my domestic situation with my mum and the way she'd been treating me for the past few years, or ever since I started being a disappointment to her or something. And honestly, the way I would put it is I need to forgive my mum for doing that now because she's renounced it and apologized, and she seems to mean it. And I will never forgive my mum for it because Gabe never forgave me for it. And we are talking about a litany of abuse when it comes to my mum. Like the kind of stuff that I did to Gabe in that letter, like with the overarching narratives, the condescension, and the rhetoric, the rhetoric, like I'd had this shit happen to me so many times with my mum. My mum was just kind of angry with me, and it just came out in spite. Whereas with Gabe, it had only happened once. And if in my life I can do something like that a single time in my life and not be forgiven for it, then I'm never going to forgive my mum for that because that's what made me who I am. So yeah, but there's no use fixating on the past because like there's it was fate. There was nothing like, I just behaved like that because that's who I was. It's this confluence of being put through this abuse myself as well as being autistic, and then everything being more intense and more over the top with explanations and stuff. It should never have happened, but there's nothing. I feel like there's nothing that I could have done to have stopped it from happening. So that's kind of why I feel fucked. I mean, I'm glad that on some level I still can't renounce it in the sense that I just am that person who did that, and I don't think it's really possible. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure. I doubt I would do it ever. I wouldn't be capable of ever doing it again because of the sheer pain I've been put through for it. But it's been so hard for me to rationalize that I shouldn't have even behaved like that because of, even though it's definitely abusive and I know it is rationally, but I just can't feel it because of who I am and where all this came from with me, and just the fact that I'd been betrayed, and just the level of that betrayal cuts into because of everything I've already been saying about the feelings of lack of intimacy and my social failure, my shroud, and all that. So, okay. It is what it is, and I wish we could move on, but Gabe's reaction to that was to cancel me from the SMS community. And I just don't know what to say when you get ostracized twice. I don't know if in this video I should go over the exact way that Gabe did this, because she indirected it and had other people, she was kind of puppeted other people to do it. The other people initially acted of their own accords, out of their own ulterior motives in order to destroy me, because apparently there are people who want me destroyed for whatever reason. But then, when Gabe became aware of what had happened, she started supporting it on the sly. And so people still think that I abused her. It was, well, I guess this is where we get into the next section, but I mean, there is a doc, I think, that I wrote recently towards the end of my whole case section on my ban response. That is basically a case on Gabe on 1UPs for life, and it goes through the exact method by which this was done. But yeah, in the beginning, it wasn't Gabe's fault in the beginning because she'd gone and she'd left it with, well, it was her fault in the sense that she had basically entrusted somebody she knew was an abusive person in order to handle it for her. And she wasn't friends with that person, or at least not close friends, in order to be handling such a personal issue. But she did it anyway, so that's why it was her fault even in the beginning. But she wasn't there in the beginning. So, in November, December, January 2023, I was just trying to get her to climb down from this position, particularly when she came back. But I guess the thing that I want to say, yeah, okay, I skipped ahead a bit. September 2022 with Theo is, Theo tried to help me get this dealt with. But because of the level of conspiracy, his head broke very soon and he focused on himself and his IRL situation. He just said, "My life is entering hard mode. If I had to talk about this," he was unhappy with me, but he never said why he was unhappy with me, with the way I was handling it. But he said, if I have to keep thinking about this for another minute, will leave Discord. And so, it was kind of the end. I realized it was all over, and I in October 2022, I left the internet for at least a month. And that was my first real attempt to just isolate myself and to try to see if I was serious about killing myself. Um, so I said to Theo, okay, well, I'm leaving, so in that case, this is goodbye. And later on, he tried to say that I was the one who initiated us not cutting it off. But I mean, he said to me, I'm just not going to talk about any of this with you anymore. So I don't know. I don't think so. But I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself again. Basically, yeah, that's that, right? I'm in October 2022. Theo quits, trying to help me, and Luke as well in September tried to take advantage of what had happened with me and Gabe and me getting banned. He tried to socially overthrow me. He tried to support the case against me. He started bullying me over my speedrun records, just kind of very, with kind of hatred in his voice that you could hear, just saying kind of like, I think I'm going to be sick, when he beat one of my records. And just kind of targeting me in this way in order to put me down, as well as just starting to talk to people about me as well. Just kind of starting to bring back the conditions of the social abuse again. And I managed to get rid of him by just exposing the way he was being malicious to me. And then he said, like, I'm gonna leave my persona behind and just be friends with people in private. And I just thought, well, it's finally over. And it bears mentioning this because then in January 2023, when he came back, I just that was the point where I just realized the thing that I said earlier, which is that I'm never going to be able to get away from him. Not here on the internet, not in my head. The world is too small. And so then I just realized I need to press ahead. I remember panicking so hard in that January, and really the way that I feel now, about killing myself and all that, I think like the commitment to it, I think, dates back to that January and to that feeling of just knowing I was never, because the worse things got and the more I lost support from my friends and lost friends, the more of Luke's damage took over my life and felt inevitable, the more I started to fear Luke. So that's why. But yeah, And that's really that, in terms of the story, the way things evolved ever since January 2023 has just been Gabe equivocating, telling different people that she's for or against the ban, encouraging the mods to do it by throwing histrionic fits in voice calls, um, just like making everything about herself in terms of me trying to defend myself from the ban, and then encouraging the mods to double down, and then the mods, the SMS mods played a large part in the social abuse as a result of that and everything else. Theo, I'll bring him back up again as well, because like I said, he eventually said to me like I was the one who distanced from him, but in that time he had just sort of started becoming friends with Luke again and supporting him. And when we spoke about it in the end in October 2022 or September, he did not know any of the bullying that Luke was doing, which kept going from September 2022 to like July 2023. And kind of since then as well, his attitude has just been avoid people stuck in the mud, fuck them, he says. So we kind of know how he feels about that. But yeah, Theo said like, Theo didn't know any of this had happened, and he was saying like, oh, it seems to me like Luke has changed and become more mature and everything. And then I list all the stuff, and he's just like, yeah, it seems to me that Luke has changed and been mature, and all of this is occasional fits of resentment he should have done better at controlling. Whereas what I was doing, because I'd broken and I just started talking about Gabe on Twitter and the way she had ostracized me and blown up this personal situation that I'm now talking to you about in this video into like a full-on drama in the community, just convincing everyone to hate me. I just broke, particularly in January 2023, when I realized Luke would be with me forever. I just broke and like kind of started to choreograph my own demise by what I was saying on Twitter, just being brutally honest and writing it all down. And then that turned Theo against me. He just didn't care. He thought that my semantic violence was just as abusive as Luke's lying, manipulation, ostracization campaign. He didn't see any causality between the two, how one had caused the other. And Gabe, despite this year-long bullying campaign, just becomes friends with Luke again. So this is August 2023. And this is kind of where the situation ends, in my opinion. It's kind of August to October, and these things that I've just said, and I'm not going to go into much detail about any of them. I've heard since then from Gable lots of misrepresentations. Well, I guess the one that is very important to say is that she's been saying that she never thought that Luke had abused me, and she described the whole situation as being a personality clash with multiple misunderstandings, to summarize what Luke had done to me. And so that brings us to where we are here. That's the betrayal, right? When the true betrayal, when someone says that. Not just that, but Gabe's saying this despite having supported me. And there are definitely messages she sent to me soon after the Luke case came out that suggested that we agreed and she saw it as being serious. She just kind of hid the extent of it so that she could equivocate and pick a side later on, turn against me, I suppose. With Theo, it's worse though, because Theo, like I said, he was the one who led me on the case, He guided me to get the right impression of it. The case was basically in his opinion, written in his image of the situation. And he stood by it 100%. Is, when we did the review, the only thing he said to me was maybe you should bring up Luke's mental illness, which, to be fair, no one really understood what kind of a mental illness he had back then. Theo still thought it was just him being depressed, but that's the thing. I mean, depression obviously doesn't cause somebody to be a lying, manipulative ostracizer. And Theo acknowledged this, and that's why the case happened as it did. It was in his image, in his guide. And then to have that person, who said all of that in March 2022, February 2022, then say in sort of September, October 2023, like, I've reconsidered this case, and it's no, I think it's just based on misunderstandings and love triangle drama, he said. Luke being understandably threatened and responding in understandable ways, I guess. And that's the end of, I guess, what I was going to say is just betrayal. Betrayal in this case is how much do you rely on what the impressions that your friends give you and their support when dealing with somebody who abused you, who socially abused you and ostracized you. And they just pull out the rug from under your feet as if none of it had happened. Is it even abuse? Did I get abused? Do I feel like this for no reason? These are the questions that are being put to me now by everyone who doesn't believe me. And I have to decide, are they just blaming the victim? Or did I just lose my mind? And, at this point, I mean, one of the reasons I made this video is because I remember I read through all of the messages, not all of the messages, but a lot of the key sort of sections of conversation that I had to, in order to defend myself from Gabe's accusations. And also to defend myself from Theo's gaslighting, which was intensive. And I don't mean to bring it up now because I think writing does a better job of it, and all the stuff that he said and how it undermined my entire confidence in my sense of worth of being a friend in friendships, and just straight up Darvo, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender of my case, and just revising the whole history to deny that the abuse had happened. But yeah, that's basically what I'm being put through. I hope that makes sense. It's like, if you get abused by someone and people apparently see that it's happened, then they need to just get behind you. They need to take your side and protect you forever. It's not even about me pressuring Luke forever in public. I've been pressuring him in public because of the walls caving in terms of being believed and that kind of thing. But it's not about that. It's just about your friends being there and not turning against you to support your abuser. And phrasing it as if I just overreacted to everything. I know, I mean, I've read enough of these abuse cases that I know this is just how it is. And I know from my own emotions, because I don't have a history of mental illness, All I have is like compulsion only OCD, which is not really relevant at all. It doesn't stop me from having a clear picture of people. All I have that might be biasing me is my trauma from social relations in the past, but I know that what happened here is not supposed to happen. I know I'm not supposed to just be cut out, and as a result of my reaction and pain about that, which is explained by my trauma, to just be left out. to dry or like kicked out, with my friends supporting my abuser, who was also supposed to be my friend and was somebody I held dearly. And that's it. I think that's the story then. I went over my regrets for the letter to Luke, the letter to Gabe, and for just not being clear enough with Gabe about what was hurting me, even though I don't feel like that would have made the difference. The two letters definitely would have made the difference. I could have still been friends with Luke had I not sent the letter, and then none of this would have happened. Whether I would want to be friends with Luke, I'm not sure about, because I still would have had to get over him, but that's natural. Getting over people is painful, but you have to just do it. That's not what this is about. And then the ways they hurt me, the initial slander where everyone was just telling me I was an abuser and I wasn't, and just, or rather accusing me of emotionally controlling Luke. And then losing friends and coming to terms with the fact that I'd lost friends permanently over something, over completely positive friendships, over nothing I had done to them, just Luke. Those were the first two, and then the third was that betrayal by Gabe and that intensifying feeling of her just going cold on me because she wanted to be friends with people supporting my abuser, and I couldn't get over that. Obviously, the people supporting my abuser didn't care that she was friends with me, but I, as the victim, had extra conditions, and it's like I was hard to be around. I was difficult, and then Luke claiming he was going to finally leave me in peace, and then rejecting that claim. That's the fifth one. The fourth one was when an abuse case dropped on me and I lost, like, in SMS, and I lost all of my, a big part of my coping mechanism, being able to be in the SMS community. And then the sixth one was just Gabe befriending Luke again, despite Luke being a bully and having abused me, and Gabe just being like, no, it wasn't abuse. It was personality clash with multiple misunderstandings. There's your summary. There's your executive summary. Maybe this wasn't that useful as a chronology, but fuck it. I did my best. I'll probably put a few. Check the description. I'll probably put a few like notes there to make that clearer. But yeah, thanks for listening.